Hello, everyone. Welcome to Get Nerdy with Bergie. I'm your host, Nicole Bergen, the lady with the red glasses, and I'm so excited. I have a friend with me today, Mr. Randolph Rice from Rice Law. Today, we're going to be talking about his research exploration with the Elevate Marketing Research Team. What were some of those aha moments? What actions did he take? And what kind of initial results has he seen to help grow his firm right here in 2026? Let's get started. Before we get started, I just want Randolph to give you the floor. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Nicole. I'm in my, I'm 20 years of practicing law this year, and I am,
Congratulations.
thank you. And now I've got this fairly large personal injury law firm in Maryland, and we're having a blast with it, having a great time, and obviously growing every year over year, which we like to see. So that's kind of the backstory of how we got to where we are today.
Thanks for sharing that. And I know, like any other law firm that might be watching right now or a marketer of a law firm, they probably experience some of the same questions that you had when we first met with, hey, I'm spending a lot of dollars on marketing. Is it working? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've always subscribed to the fact that you've got to get out there in front of people. And, I remember early on when we started back in '09, it was how many keywords can you pump into a page? And that worked with Google. And then Google figured it out. And then slowly started to do sort of early on marketing. But eventually, obviously, we got into more of the TV, radio, billboards, PPC, LS, everything you could imagine doing, OTT. That really picked up heavy for us probably right after COVID. And I've certainly learned a lot of things. I've made a lot of mistakes and cost a lot of money, but that's certainly part of the process. And I think, obviously, the more you are focusing on the numbers are obviously very important, right? Looking at your numbers, making sure you're figuring out where things work. Now, that being said, sometimes you got to go with a gut instinct. But at the end of the day, you certainly also need to look at the numbers. Are you really getting the value?
And so there's a lot of questions there, right? You're now operating a multi-million-dollar marketing budget. And the question is, how do I stack these different tactics on top of each other to yield the lowest cost per case acquisition possible, right? In comes Team Elevate, right? Here we come, knocking on the door. Randolph Rice, what's up? Let's do a market research study. And if you could just share with people that are watching here, what did you learn from that study?
Last year, we were seeing a lot of flat numbers in terms of our marketing spend and the return on that investment, or like the ROAS, the return on advertising spend that I know you, Nicole, you love to talk about. And I think it's a great
ROAS is
metric.
my favorite
You
number.
love ROAS, right? I love that. But what we started noticing was that number was inching up, and following, obviously, we track every single data point every week, and we track every month, and noticing that we were spending more and not seeing a return on it. I happened to go to a conference in Detroit, and you were giving a presentation, and I happened to only be there for about 8 hours. I just had one day to get in and get out, but I saw your presentation, was thoroughly impressed by it, sent you a couple of messages. Finally, we connected and said, hey, look, guys, we need to figure out what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what is not resonating with people, who is our group that is paying attention to what we're saying. And that's what we did with that survey. And I thought it was a great survey that gave us some interesting information. And I'll tell you, the one thing that came out of it, Nicole, that I thought was somewhat interesting and encouraging for us was that we changed our name from Rice Mirtha Pasauris to just Rice Law in January of 25. And I was pleasantly shocked by our unaided name recognition in that report, which tells us that the work that we've been doing with TV and radio and billboards and everything else seemed to be resonating, but it also showed us that we had a long way to go.
So if you're not familiar what we do at Elevate, we went out for Randolph and surveyed hundreds of people that fit the primary persona he's looking for. And we asked them, what law firms have you heard of? And they told us. And what's really fun about that exploration with you, Randolph, is what we learned about the younger consumer that you personally really resonate. It must be those handsome looks and that hair. But it wasn't expected that you did well with people over 50, but it was also exciting to see your popularity with Black women and Gen X, those 45-year-olds. And that was a really telling thing for you too, because at the time you spending really any money in streaming video. And we talked about that after the research assessment, that was a place that you probably needed to look.
The fact of the matter is that linear TV, while it is still a great value and it reaches a broad group of the market, the sad part is that it's just losing its foothold in what it used to have. And in addition to that, if you think about it, that group of people that are watching linear television are getting older, and older people are typically not clients of personal injury firms. They're not driving as much, they're not commuting, they're probably retired. And so really to reach those younger ages, that 25 to 54, as you mentioned, you've got to look at other mediums.
So just to go back to the streaming, I feel like this was an area we talked a lot about that the research shed light on. It was a place you weren't very focused or had been frustrated by in the past, right? Different vendors and whatnot, the costs and the trickiness of it, and there's fraud, and there's all these different things that are very challenging about CTV and OTT. But we had some healthy and spirited conversation about how important it was, and I pushed you pretty hard to revisit, right? YouTube and Amazon and some of these other providers. I'm curious, it's been a couple weeks now. What action have you taken?
Well, we have gotten a new vendor. We found somebody that is, I would say, one step away from the top of the funnel or bottom of the funnel, whichever way you want to look at it is that, and just for people out there to sort of understand how OTT works, is that you've got this sort of group like the Amazons and these other groups that are
Publishers.
yeah, publishers, right? Yeah, you've got the technical terms there, but they're the ones that either have the content, for example, like a Paramount, right? They can sell you their content, but when they want to buy Hulu or some other station, they've got to go and buy it from somebody else. The closer you get to those individuals, the better pricing you're probably going to find. The problem is that if you get two or three people down the line, you've got them taking 20 or whatever, 30% off of every dollar you spend. So it gets very expensive. The other problem I think with OTT, and again, yes, I have done many, many campaigns with OTT. This is our third, I believe. It is very expensive when we're looking at that CPM, that cost per thousand, because I always like, and Nicole, you've heard me use this before, is that OTT is built for a brand selling Lululemon selling a crossbody bag to females 25 to 35 in a specific zip code, because they can target those individuals, right? And they're willing to pay that high CPM. The problem with lawyers, and particularly personal injury lawyers that need to reach everybody in the market, they don't have a specific group of people like that. They're not looking for females. They're looking for males and females. They're looking for everybody. They're looking for
It's a much broader reach, right? You're looking for efficiency, efficient reach, right?
That's right.
There was a lot of other stuff in the research too that confirmed some things that shed light on you as a spokesperson. It's not easy to get that kind of feedback, but you were a great sport about it. For those of you that don't know, we can put videos of you or Randolph in front of your consumer set and ask people what you think. What was that process like for you, seeing that data come back?
Well, first off, I was a bit nervous that they were going to hate
Of course.
me. But you know what, though? There's always somebody that's not going to like you. But it did come back somewhat favorable, and actually more than favorable. It said, look, we think that he's reliable and trustworthy. They really didn't have any big complaints. I think that they wanted to, gives us direction for new content that we're shooting, which is what we're doing right now. We took all that data that we learned from those ads and we said, okay, we gave it to our production company and told them, hey, look, these are the things that we're trying to accomplish. Here's what people want to see. Let's build spots around that data. And that's what we're doing right now.
That's right. And so it just gives you the confidence, right? Who am I resonate with? Let's put stories together. So when you think about marketing, ladies and gentlemen, as complicated as it is, it's about saying the right thing in the right place, right? And so through our Elevate research studies, and like what we did for Randolph, we looked at both of those things. We dissected them, we looked at who he resonated with, and we looked at how familiar people were and where were those market opportunities, which is now you're in the implementation phase. I did want to bring up a fun topic that came out of your research. Let's talk about radio. There are a lot
Yeah.
of personal injury firms that maybe, like you said earlier, make decisions to spend money in places that just feels right. And you were faced with some data that caused you to pause and reassess. What was that like?
Well, it was a big band-aid we had to pull off, I think, but it was backed up by the data that we were looking at, and also trying to figure out how do we pivot into the right areas and the right mediums. So we had been very, very heavy on radio since I think we started around 2020, and really built up our radio presence to where we were on every single radio station all the time, nonstop. We had what's called an RDS, which is a display on
Can
the
you
TV
explain
screen.
that for people
Yeah,
that don't know what that
yeah.
is?
So the RDS is what's called a radio display system, and what happens is the radio station rather puts in up to 64 characters, and they can then put that information on drivers' dashboards. And it's like a traveling billboard right in your car. Well, the problem that we noticed was, and I think this is what we've been seeing over the years, and this just happens with technology, is that cars are getting smarter, cars are getting better screens, and those screens that have the radio station on them are going away. On top of that, you've got people that are listening to Spotify and Pandora and Apple
Mhm.
Music and all these other things that are pulling away from that market. So not only do you see a decline in the number of what the cumes that they call in the radio business, the number of people that are actually listening to the radio, but you also see this new technology that's taking that information off the dash. So it was a big decision that we made to pull from most of the radio stations and really shift that budget to a different medium that we thought was going to be more productive. And to date,
And
I
that
got to
the
tell you,
data showed us where to look, right?
yeah,
Without
yeah.
giving away too many secrets. We learned that through the market assessment. Now it's only know it's been a couple of weeks, and we haven't talked about this yet. How's it going?
It's great. I mean, January was one of our best months so far, our best Januaries ever, actually, by I think like 40 or 50%, which is a good way to come into the year. You know, January can always be a little slow, particularly here in Baltimore, where we had a bunch of snow and shut down the city for a couple of days. We still came out of it with really good numbers for January. And you hope to, I shouldn't say hope, because I always take this line from John Morgan or whoever said it, that hope is not a plan, and I hate using that term, but you are confident that the numbers are moving in the right direction based on the levers that we pulled.
I would like to end with something kind of exciting that I want to hear about, and that is your sponsorship of the USA Bobsled team in the Olympics, which is going on right now across the United States and the world. I believe
Yeah,
you have a bobsled helmet.
I have the bobsled
Let's
helmet from our
let's see it.
commercials that we shot that they sent us, and it's pretty cool. We got back last year. We started talking to NBC about getting involved in the Olympics and advertising during the Olympics, and we really needed a strong, strong spot that tied into the whole Olympic thing. And we started thinking, are we going to build a bobsled? Are we going to CGI? And all these ideas just never they didn't work, right? And we happen to know a guy who had worked with the USA Bobsled team 4 years ago. And we said, can you reach out to them, find out what the deal is? And they come back and they say, we'd love for you to be a sponsor. We'll send you a bobsled to use. We'll wrap it with your logo. We'll send you the uniform. We'll send you the helmet. And we shot these bobsled commercials. And I got to tell you, they are a huge hit. Everywhere I go, people say to me in Baltimore, "Oh my gosh, we love your bobsled spot. We can't wait." I was on the local Fox station this morning, and they even brought it up and said, "Oh my gosh, we love the bobsled. When's the first race?" We had some T-shirts for them that have the official bobsled logo on it. So it has been a lot of fun, and we've gotten to use it. I'll show this real quick in our outdoor campaign. So
Look at it in the helmet. Is that actually you or is that a model?
that's me. That's me in the helmet. So we got to use the bobsled in a lot of our billboards around Baltimore and Maryland. So it's been a lot of fun. We've got to now figure out who we're going to sponsor in the summer games, maybe. I don't know.
All right. Cheers to you. Hats off to you for stepping outside your comfort zone and getting in that bobsled with that helmet. I love that kind of creativity, but it still was professional and on brand with your personality. It wasn't something awkwardly not you, which that is also a good reminder that if you're not humorous, don't do humor,
Yeah,
right? Stay in
fine
your
line
lane.
to walk. Fine line to, you got to be really careful about what you do, because you go from being respected and trusted to being the joke, and you don't want to be the joke, obviously.
There you go. Well, there you have it. Thank you so much, Randolph, for coming today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Get Nerdy with Bergie. Check out ricelaw.com. Go visit his YouTube page, like, subscribe, comment on his bobsled commercials. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Make it a great one.